Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to continue with modes and begin to learn how they relate to chords. To this end, we're going to learn about diatonic harmony, diatonic chords from the modes of the major scale, the academic terminology for these chords, the diatonic chord formulas for the major scale, the diatonic chord formulas for the natural minor scale, along with the academic terminology for these chords. We'll introduce the harmonic minor scale and finish with the diatonic chord formulas for the harmonic minor scale. In subsequent episodes, we'll see how all this applies to actual musical examples. So let's get started. In Music Mechanics 9, we define the term diatonic as a musical element that is constructed from a scale. Diatonic harmony, then, is harmony that is entirely created from a scale. This harmony most often includes diatonic chords. Since the definition of harmony is notes simultaneously sounding together, it doesn't automatically follow that the notes are arranged into chords. Nonetheless, most of the time, diatonic harmony consists of diatonic chords. To create diatonic chords, we need to start out with a scale. Let's look at the B-flat major scale to illustrate this. The B-flat major scale creates these modes. As expected, notice each of these modes contains a B-flat and an E-flat since all of them were created from the B-flat major scale. Now let's recall what we learned in episode 19, namely that most Western music is tertiary or constructed with stacked thirds. What if we were to skip every other note in a mode and stack the notes that remain on top of each other? We would create a chord. We'll begin with the Ionian mode. Let's accept the tonic, skip the second, accept the third, skip the fourth, accept the fifth, skip the sixth, accept the seventh, and skip the tonic up an octave. Not only because we're skipping every other note, but also because it's already included an octave down. Now let's stack the notes remaining on top of each other. The remaining notes stacked on top of each other create a B-flat major 7th chord. Let's do this with the rest of the modes. Here's Dorian. Again, we accept the tonic, skip the second, accept the third, skip the fourth, accept the fifth, skip the sixth, and accept the seventh. These stacked remaining notes create a C minor 7th chord. Phrygian is next. The remaining stacked thirds from the Phrygian mode create a D minor 7th chord. Now we'll look at the Lydian mode. These remaining notes create an E-flat major 7th chord. Mixolydian is next. The stacked thirds taken from the Mixolydian mode create an F dominant 7th chord. The next mode is Aeolian. Stacking thirds from the Aeolian mode creates a G minor 7th chord. The final mode to look at is the Locrian mode. The remaining stacked thirds from the Locrian mode create an A half diminished 7th chord. Now let's look at all the chords we have just created. Notice these chords are only built from notes that are in the B-flat major scale, and here are the chord symbols. Each of these chords represents the stacked thirds taken from a mode located on a specific scale degree. For example, the stacked thirds taken from the Dorian mode, which starts on the second scale degree of the parent major scale, create a minor 7th chord, while stacked thirds taken from the Locrian mode, which starts on the 7th scale degree of the parent major scale, create a half diminished 7th chord. Since every major scale is created with the exact same interval formula, it is reasonable to assume the modes from any given major scale would create these chord types, namely a major 7th, minor 7th, minor 7th, major 7th, dominant 7th, minor 7th, and half diminished 7th chord in that order. The only thing that would change would be the root of each chord. For example, the E major scale would create these modes and these chords. In both the B-flat and E major scales, notice the chord built on the first scale degree of the parent major scale is always a major 7th. The chord on the second scale degree is always a minor 7th. The third scale degree, a minor 7th. Fourth, major 7th. Fifth, dominant 7th. Sixth, minor 7th. And 7th, half diminished 7th. These chord qualities are universal to all major scales since all major scales share the same interval formula construction. We can use this knowledge of chord types to create a formula using Roman numerals to predict which chords we should expect to see from any given major scale. These Roman numerals are used to indicate which scale degree of a parent major scale a chord is built on, irrespective of which inversion the chord is in. The inversion doesn't matter. The Roman numerals also indicate which kind of third above the root each chord has. The 7th chords built with triads containing a major third above the root, such as major and augmented triads, are indicated with uppercase Roman numerals. 7th chords with lowercase Roman numerals indicate the 7th chord is built with a triad containing a minor third above the root, such as minor and diminished triads. You should be aware that some authors write these Roman numerals in uppercase only. I will be using both uppercase and lowercase notation since it more specifically defines the chord, indicating both the scale degree of the parent scale a chord is built on as well as its quality. This diatonic chord formula, my own terminology, for the major scales can also be used to predict the triads from a given major scale by simply removing the seventh from each chord and figuring out the resulting triads. Let's do this now. The resulting triads are major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and diminished, which can also be notated with Roman numerals. Incidentally, these diatonic chords can also be referred to by their formal academic names. To illustrate, here are the academic names once again for the scale degrees of a major scale: tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, and leading tone. These particular terms can not only be used to define the scale degrees, but also to describe the chords that can be found on the various scale degrees. For example, the third scale degree is referred to as the mediant, and the chord that is found on the third scale degree is also referred to as the mediant. One might refer to it as the mediant chord, for example. Historically speaking, chords were primarily triadic during the Baroque and Classical periods, with sevenths being added to the 5 chords in the diatonic chord formula most commonly. Additionally, harmony was based around diatonic major and natural minor tonal centers and keys. In this respect, classical music and current commercial music have a lot in common. Seventh chords, on the other hand, are the fundamental building blocks of jazz and jazz chords. We can also discover the diatonic chord formula for the natural minor scales. Take a look at the modes from the E natural minor scale. If we skip every other note in each mode like we did for the major scale, we create these chords. Taking note of the unique chord qualities of each chord built on each scale degree, we can create a diatonic chord formula for the natural minor scale using Roman numerals. If we delete the seventh of each chord in the prior example, we arrive at this formula for the diatonic triads derived from the natural minor scale. The academic terminology for these chords remains the same as they do for diatonic chords of the major scale. For example, a 3 is still referred to as the mediant chord, the 1 is still referred to as the tonic chord, and so forth. However, one difference in terminology exists between the major and natural minor scale regarding the 7th scale degree. Because the 7th scale degree is a whole step below the octave, it's referred to as the subtonic. For example, the D chord here might be referred to as the subtonic chord. At this juncture, we need to introduce the harmonic minor scale. We can construct it using the harmonic minor scale formula, which is whole step, half step, whole step, half step, augmented second, and half step. Let's hear how this sounds. This scale has a Middle Eastern flavor and an unusual interval, the augmented second. It also contains a leading tone similar to the major scale that by its very nature wants to resolve to the tonic. For example, what would happen if I stopped at the 7th scale degree and didn't resolve it to the tonic? This is what it would sound like. The 7th scale degree really demonstrates a pull toward the tonic to feel complete and resolved. We can construct this scale with the same method we use for the major and natural minor scales, starting by writing notes from the tonic to the octave on consecutive lines and spaces. Now we write in the formula and adjust those notes with accidentals to conform to the harmonic minor scale formula. You can also think of this scale as a natural minor scale with a raised 7th. Like the major and natural minor scales, we can create modes from the harmonic minor scale. Let's hear how these sound. These harmonic minor modes are referred to with numbers instead of names like Dorian or Lydian and are notated with uppercase Roman numerals. For example, this is mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4, mode 5, mode 6, and mode 7. If we skip every other note in each mode like we did for the major and natural minor scales, we create these chords. Let's hear how these sound. The diatonic chord formula for the harmonic minor scale then is this. If we delete the 7th of each chord in the prior example, we arrive at this formula for the diatonic triads derived from the harmonic minor scale. Let's hear how these sound. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like and leave a comment below if you have any questions. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you like the music you've been listening to, please be sure to check out my friend Drew Young's album Trace Conmigo at this link.